Welcome to Monk's Temple. Find a place of comfort now. Let the walls around you soften in your awareness. Let the sounds of the world become distant, like far-off mountains. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your own breath, the anchor of this present moment. In and out. In and out. There is no destination tonight, only a journey, a long, quiet walk through the gardens of understanding. We are here to explore the nature of true wisdom, not as a collection of facts, but as a way of being, a way of seeing. This path we walk is an ancient one, trodden by seekers for thousands of years. It is a path illuminated by the profound insights of Buddhism, by the timeless awakening of the Buddha himself, who saw the very heart of suffering and the way to its end. That depth of seeing, clear, compassionate, and liberated, is the essence of the intelligence we will explore together. Let us begin not with a lesson, but with a story. A tale from the silent halls of the monk's temple. Once, in a valley between two great rivers, there was a master stonecutter named Alara. She was sought after for the exquisite millstones she carved, stones so perfectly balanced they could grind grain with the whisper of a breeze. A young, energetic apprentice came to her, full of grand plans. "Master," he declared on his first day, "I will carve not just millstones, but great statues. I will build a fountain for the town square. My name will be known in every village." He spoke passionately of his future creations to anyone who would listen, to the farmers bringing grain, to other apprentices, to travelers passing through. Alara listened, her hands continuously smoothing the surface of a granite block. She said nothing. Months passed. The apprentice's grand announcements continued, but his workbench held only fragments, half-formed ideas abandoned when the initial excitement cooled. He noticed Alara, who each dawn would enter her solitary workshop, curtain drawn, and emerge only at dusk. She never spoke of her work. One evening, frustrated, he burst out, "How will anyone know your skill if you are silent as the stone itself?" Alara put down her chisel. She led him to her workshop and drew back the curtain. Inside, lit by the last slanting rays of the sun, stood a row of finished millstones. But they were unlike any he had seen. Each was a masterpiece of geometry and grace, and in the still air of the room, he realized they were spinning, ever so slowly, propelled by nothing but the perfectly balanced air currents from a small window. They were in perpetual, silent motion. "The work," Alara said softly, "speaks when the work is done. Until then, my energy is not for telling, but for turning." To speak of the turning is to steal breath from the wheel. The apprentice understood. He had been using the wind of his breath to announce a storm that never came. Alara had used that same breath to give life to stone. This is our first glimpse of wisdom. The wise understand that true creation happens in sacred silence. They know that premature speech scatters the vital energy needed to bring a vision to life. In the teachings of the Buddha, this aligns deeply with samavaka, or right speech, speech that is truthful, beneficial, and most importantly, timely. A wise person conserves their creative samadhi, their concentrated power, for the act of doing itself. Their achievements arrive not with fanfare, but with the quiet, undeniable weight of completion, like a fruit that ripens unseen and then fills the air with its sweetness. If this story of the silent stonecutter resonates with you, if you feel the power in that quiet workshop, then you have already taken the first step on this path with us. The monk's temple is a space for such contemplations. By subscribing, you do something beautiful. you choose to walk this path of depth more regularly. You become part of a community that values stillness over noise, and your subscription is a gentle signal that you wish these journeys to continue. Now, let us leave Alara's workshop and venture further into the landscape of insight. Imagine now that your mind is not a locked chest, but a vast, receptive sky. A foolish person believes their sky is complete, a finished painting. They see only the clouds they themselves have painted and call that the entirety of the heavens. A wise person knows their sky is infinitely expansive and ever-changing. To understand it, they must observe every kind of weather, not just their own. They watch the gentle cirrus of a poet's verse, the cumulonimbus of a laborer's struggle, the clear azure of a child's laughter, and even the strange, beautiful aurora of a madman's dream. There was a healer in the hills who could cure ailments that baffled others. A young physician, trained in the great academies, came to her demanding her secrets. "Show me your pharmacopoeia. Give me your formulas," he insisted. The healer handed him an empty basket. "First," she said, "go and sit with the old woman who weaves baskets by the swamp. Note how her fingers move, though they are twisted with pain." Annoyed, he did so. Next, she sent him to listen to the blacksmith's hammer strike the iron, and to discern the different tones. Then, to observe the way the innkeeper's wife could calm a rowdy crowd with a mere look. The physician returned, basket still empty, head full of seemingly irrelevant impressions. "This is nonsense. What has basket weaving to do with medicine?" he cried. The healer smiled. "The weaver taught you about patience and adaptive structure. The blacksmith taught you about the transformative power of precise, repeated force. The innkeeper's wife taught you about the medicine of presence. Now," she said, pointing to a patient with a trembling palsy, "heal." Without thinking in academic terms, the physician approached. He moved with the weaver's patience, applied a massaging pressure with the blacksmith's rhythmic certainty, and held a gaze as steadying as the innkeeper's wife's. The patient's tremors eased. He had not been given a formula, he had been taught to see the aquifer of universal experience beneath the surface of any specialty. The wise are eternal apprentices to life itself. The Buddha, before his enlightenment, studied under many teachers of different disciplines. He learned the depths of meditation, the rigors of asceticism, the limits of philosophy. He did not dismiss any stream of knowledge until he had drunk from its waters. True wisdom possesses the humility of a canyon, deepened not by its own substance, but by its willingness to be shaped by all the waters that flow through it. Let us now contemplate a great danger on the path, the seductive, whispering mist of rumor. In a coastal village, a tale spread that the old lighthouse on the northern cliff was cursed. Any ship that took bearing from its light, it was said, would be led onto hidden rocks. Fishermen avoided the rich northern waters. The village grew poor and fearful. A young sailor, Anya, decided she would know the truth. She did not gather people to argue against the rumor. She did not angrily defend the lighthouse. One moonless night, she rowed a small skiff out toward the northern channel. Her heart was a drum against her ribs, the village's fearful stories echoing in her mind. But she fixed her eyes on the lone, sweeping beam. She rowed toward it, using it as her guide. She found the channel deep, clear, and safe. She landed on the shore beneath the lighthouse and climbed the cliff. Inside, she found not a ghost, but a broken lens mechanism that caused the beam to sporadically jump, a simple, fixable flaw born of neglect, not malice. She repaired it with a leather strap from her boot. The beam steadied. Returning at dawn, she simply showed the village the worn gear and the sturdy strap. "The light is true," she said. It was the mechanism that faltered. The curse was broken not by denial, but by the simple, courageous act of direct seeing. A wise person treats all second-hand information as that flickering, distant light. They do not run from it in terror nor sail toward it in blind faith. They navigate their own craft of discernment to investigate its source. This is the very heart of the Buddha's injunction to ehipassiko, come and see. Believe only upon observation, upon testing against the bedrock of your own experience. The wise mind is rooted in the soil of verifiable fact, not the shifting sands of hearsay. They trust the footprint in the earth, not the boast about the journey. This is where we will pause our journey for this first part. We have touched upon the power of silent completion, the vast sky of learning, and the steady light of personal verification. These are not mere tips, they are foundational stones on the path of awakening. Let us continue, and sink deeper into this shared tranquility. Let your breath be your guide, a gentle tide on the shore of your awareness. Now, contemplate one of the most precious and fleeting gifts we have, time. Most people live as if standing before an infinite ocean of time, dipping their cup casually, spilling much, always thinking another wave will bring more. The wise see time as a single, sacred vessel of water carried on a long desert journey. You cannot create more. You can only decide, with utmost care, how to drink, when to drink, and what precious seeds to moisten with each drop. There was an old scribe in a temple whose task was to copy a lengthy, holy sutra before the rainy season retreat. A novice, eager to help, said, "I will copy half. We have weeks." The novice spent his days arranging his inks perfectly, sharpening his quills to fine points, discussing the beauty of the script with other novices, and telling visitors of the important work he was about to undertake. The old scribe, wordlessly, each morning simply began. He copied one character, then the next. When distracted by temple sounds, he returned to the character before him. When tired, he rested his eyes, then continued. He did not speak of the work, he did not measure the pages left. He was in a dialogue with the ink, the paper, and the meaning of each word. The retreat began. The novice, surrounded by beautiful, unused tools, had not copied a single page. The old scribe laid the completed sutra upon the altar. The novice, ashamed, asked, "How did you do it while I merely prepared?" The scribe replied, "You were painting a portrait of tomorrow with the ink of today. I used today's ink for today's character." The future sutra was built only of present moments, faithfully lived. The wise are that scribe. They understand the profound Buddhist truth of anicca, impermanence. All things, including our seconds and years, are in constant, irreversible flux. Procrastination is the act of drinking from an imaginary future well while dying of thirst now. Wisdom uses the now to plant, to write, to act upon what is most essential. It understands that the dream of tomorrow is a phantom, the actionable reality of this breath is the only true material from which a life is built. Now, let us lift our gaze. Does the ancient, towering redwood complain when the moss grows on its north side? Does it resent the woodpecker? It allows the moss to be moss, the bird to be a bird. It stands, providing shelter, transforming air, doing its silent work without grievance. A wise person cultivates a heart like that redwood. People, in their complexity, are like all the flora and fauna of a forest, each acting according to their own nature, their own light, their own wounds. To complain about a person's fundamental nature is like the redwood complaining about the direction of the wind. I recall a personal anecdote from my early days at the monk's temple. There was an older monk responsible for the kitchen gardens. He was a man of few words and exacting standards. To me, a young postulant full of ideals about spiritual harmony, he seemed perpetually sour. He would point out a poorly weeded row, a water bucket out of place, with a grunt. I began to harbor a quiet resentment. He spoils the peace, I thought to myself, building a narrative of his negativity. One afternoon, during a pounding rainstorm, I saw him from the dormitory window. He was not in the sheltered toolshed. He was out in the vegetable patch, carefully placing hand-fashioned clay domes over the tender shoots of the youngest seedlings, getting soaked to the skin. He moved with a focused tenderness that utterly belied his usual gruffness. In that moment, my complaining mind stilled. I saw him not as a grumpy monk, but as a man utterly devoted to protecting life, whose communication was through action, not sweet words. My complaints had been a filter obscuring his true essence. The wise released the heavy burden of complaint. This is the practice of karuna, compassion, and upekkha, equanimity, in Buddhism. They understand that suffering and difficult behaviors are part of the shared human condition. Complaining is adding your own layer of suffering on top of the existing situation. They practice accepting people as they are in this moment, which is the first step toward understanding, and perhaps, true help. This doesn't mean allowing harm, it means not poisoning your own inner well with the bitter acid of, why are you not otherwise? From the stillness of non-complaint, we find the strength to face a universal experience, failure. On any genuine path, you will fall. The unwise lie where they fall, cataloging the unfairness of the root that tripped them, the sharpness of the stone, the cruelty of the path. The wise traveler gets up and examines the fall itself. What was my gait? Was I leaning too far forward in ambition? Was I looking at the distant peak and not the path at my feet? They learn. The next step they take is different, more aware. Consider the story of the Buddha's own path. He practiced severe asceticism for years, believing that mastering the body through deprivation was the key to liberation. He failed. He brought himself to the brink of death and realized this was not the way. That monumental failure was not an end, it was the most crucial pivot. It led him to the middle way, the path of balance between indulgence and denial. That failure-born insight became the very foundation of his teaching. Wise people see failure not as a wall, but as a vital part of the map. In the Buddhist understanding of cause and effect, failure illuminates, with glaring clarity, which causes lead to dead ends. It is a fierce but invaluable teacher. The wise feel the sting, honor the lesson, and adjust their course. They do not build a monument to past success or a prison from past failure. They keep walking, their steps now informed by a deeper knowledge of the terrain. This leads us naturally to a profound and often challenging mirror, the mirror of responsibility. When you look into a mud-splattered mirror and see a distorted reflection, do you angrily wipe at your own face, or do you clean the mirror? When things go wrong, the untrained instinct is to look outward. To blame the mud, others, circumstances, fate. The wise mind looks first to the mirror itself, their own actions, their own karma. There was a village gatekeeper tasked with securing the main gate each night. One night, a band of thieves entered and stole from the storehouses. The gatekeeper's first thought was to blame the worn lock, the inattentive guards on the walls, the mayor for not providing better tools. But he paused. He remembered his own distraction that evening, his longing for his warm bed that made him rush the locking ritual. He stood before the village council and said, "The lock was old, but I did not check it. The guards were tired, but I did not call for a replacement. The failure of the gate begins with my failure of attention. I am responsible." By taking the mud of blame onto himself, he allowed the village to see the situation clearly. Energy was not wasted on a storm of mutual accusation. Instead, they together devised a better system, starting with the gatekeeper's own renewed vigilance. A wise person owns their reflection. This is the essence of karma, not as fate, but as the active law of cause and effect where you are the primary author of your causes. To blame another is to surrender your own agency, to remain forever a victim of dirty mirrors. By saying, "This is my mud," you pick up the cloth. You reclaim the power to change the reflection. We have journeyed through the stewardship of time, the redwood's quiet strength, the map revealed by failure, and the clear mirror of responsibility. These are not isolated virtues, but interconnected threads in the tapestry of an awakened life. Let us continue, and turn our gaze inward, to the quiet landscapes of the mind. Settle in once more. Let the sounds around you become like distant wind chimes, noticed but not pulling you from this shared stillness. Have you ever watched a great heron standing in a still pond? Its body is motionless, yet beneath the surface, its mind is acutely focused, aware of every ripple, every shadow of a passing fish. It is in a deep, silent dialogue with the water itself. A wise person cultivates an inner world as deep and observant as that heron. Their mind is not a crowded, noisy town square, but a secluded library at dawn. And when they have a complex text to decipher, a problem, a decision, a surge of emotion, they retreat to this inner library. They read the text aloud to themselves. They question it. They sit with it in silent contemplation. You might see their lips move faintly, not in madness, but in profound consultation with their own deepest intelligence. This is not the frantic, circular self-talk of anxiety that whispers, "What if I fail? What do they think?" That is the chattering of the monkey mind, swinging from fear to fear. The wise person's inner dialogue is purposeful, investigative. It asks, what is the true root of this feeling? If I choose path A, what are the seeds it will plant? What does this sensation feel like, in my body, right at this moment? The wise are in constant, mindful conversation with themselves. In Buddhist practice, particularly in vipassana or insight meditation, this is the core training. You learn to observe the flow of your thoughts and feelings without being swept away by them. You become the calm, non-judgmental witness. From this witness arises the capacity for true inner dialogue, a dialogue that untangles knots from the inside out. They are not talking at themselves, but with the wisest, most compassionate aspect of their own being. From this place of inner clarity, a natural protection arises. Imagine your most cherished ideas and nascent dreams are like delicate seedlings in a protected nursery. To invite every passing stranger into this nursery is to risk the seedlings being stepped on, picked prematurely, or their vitality drained by careless commentary. A wise gardener knows the value of a gate, of a season of protected growth. There was a musician who heard a unique melody in his heart, a symphony of sounds from the natural world he wished to capture. Full of excitement, he described it in detail to his friends. The cascade of water over rocks as the string section, the wind in the pines as the woodwinds, the thunder as the percussion. One friend, a practical merchant, scoffed, "Nature sounds. People want dance tunes. You'll starve." Another, a traditional composer, said, "It's unstructured, not proper music." Doubt, like a frost, settled on the musician's inspiration. The melody in his mind grew faint, confused by these foreign voices. He retreated. For a year, he told no one. He walked in the forests alone, with only his instrument and a notebook. He played for the trees and the streams. Slowly, without the static of outside opinion, the pure melody returned, stronger and more intricate. When he finally performed his Symphony of the Wild, it was so profoundly moving it created a new genre of music. He learned, the wise guard the sanctity of their inner world and nascent creations. This is not secrecy born of paranoia, but discernment born of reverence. In Buddhism, this relates to guarding the sense doors. It is about being mindful of what influences you allow into the fertile ground of your mind. Not every mind is the right soil for your tender seed. Share the fruit in its season, not the root in its vulnerable infancy. Now, let us consider how this inner clarity manifests outwardly in speech. A wise person's words are like stones chosen for a sacred cairn. Each stone is selected in the present moment. I place this one here, now. But the placement is done with an eye to the entire structure, to the message the cairn will convey to future travelers across the barren moor. They do not kick pebbles at every irritation. But if a true boundary is violated, their response is not a chaotic landslide of emotion, but a deliberate, firm placement of a boundary stone, clear, unmoving, and meant to last. There was a judge known for her unshakable composure. Lawyers would try to provoke her with theatrical arguments and personal insinuations. She would listen, her expression a still pond. One day, a lawyer, frustrated by her calm, directly insulted her intelligence and implied bias. The courtroom gasped. The judge waited for absolute silence. Then, she spoke, her voice low and even. "Your words are a spray of ink attempting to cloud the water. My role is to see the bedrock of the law beneath. Your comment is noted, and it reveals far more about the clarity of your own position than it does about this court's." She then immediately returned to the legal point at hand. The rebuke was devastating because it was factual, calm, and reflected the speaker's own action back to him. It was a stone placed in the present, but its meaning was built to endure. The wise measure speech with the care of a master builder. This is right speech embodied. It is truthful, helpful, spoken at the right time, and motivated by goodwill, or at least by a commitment to clarity, not harm. They think of the future echoes of every word released into the world. They make few promises, for they respect the unpredictable nature of time and their own limits, but the promises they make become monuments of trust. And finally, for this part, let us envision the deepest state of engaged being. Picture two bodies of water. A wide, shallow lake and a narrow, profound canyon river. The lake is busy. It reacts to every thrown stone with frantic, spreading ripples. It is stirred by every breeze, its surface alive with the skittering of insects and the chatter of reeds. It is easily muddied. The river is so deep in its own purposeful course toward the ocean that stones sink unseen to its silent bed. Breezes barely ruffle its surface. Its sound is a constant, low hum of intent. It carves canyons not through frantic activity, but through persistent, focused presence. A wise person's consciousness is the canyon river. The gossip, the petty dramas, the ever-changing opinions of the crowd are like stones thrown into the river. They cause no disruptive ripple that reaches the deep, powerful current. Their energy is not scattered, it flows with direction toward their work, their growth, their understanding. They are immersed, not distracted. A master tea ceremony practitioner was asked how she could perform the same intricate, silent ritual 1,000 times without boredom. She replied, "I am not performing a ritual. I am in a dynamic relationship with the steam, the weight of the bowl, the color of the tea, the quality of the light in this exact moment. The world outside the tea room does not disappear, it becomes part of the silence. A shouted insult from the street sounds no different to me than a bird call. A flash of pride in a perfect pour is observed like a leaf floating past on the stream. The ceremony itself is the meditation, and I am its flowing center." Yet, this deep, engrossed focus does not calcify into arrogance. The river is deep because it flows from a high place to a lower one. It is always learning from the shape of the banks it encounters, from the minerals it carries, from the tributaries that merge with it. The wise remain in a state of humble curiosity. They ask, why? And how, without the fear of appearing ignorant. In Zen Buddhism, this is called Shoshin, the beginner's mind. It is an openness, an eagerness, a lack of preconception that is available to the expert as much as to the novice. Their confidence is the quiet certainty of water finding its way to the sea, not the noisy arrogance of the lake that believes it has contained the entire sky. We have now journeyed into the inner library, the protected nursery, the cairn of speech, and the deep river of focus. These are the subtle, powerful currents that flow beneath the surface of a wise life. Let us continue our walk together, venturing now into a grove of ancient trees, where the light filters down in dappled patterns and the air holds stories. Sit back, listen, and let these tales breathe life into the principles we have been contemplating. In a town plagued by constant, bitter arguments, there lived a weaver named Silas. Unlike others, he did not weave bright tapestries of gold and crimson. He worked with a loom that held both black thread and white. Townspeople, caught in their disputes of right and wrong, good and bad, would come to him, each demanding he weave a tapestry proving their side was pure light and their opponent was utter darkness. Silas would listen to each, nodding. Then he would invite both parties to his workshop. He would not speak of their conflict. Instead, he would begin to weave. He would take the black thread and create a shape that looked, to one person, like the dark shadow of a betrayal. But then, with a few passes of the white thread, that same shape became the protective silhouette of a mountain at night. He wove scenes where light defined the form of the shadow, and shadow gave depth and dimension to the light. A solid patch of white became a blinding snowfield, lost and featureless, until a line of black thread gave it the horizon of a distant forest. After watching him weave in silence, the opponents would often leave, their argument drained of its absolute certainty. Silas never judged, never declared a winner. He simply demonstrated, through thread, the interdependent nature of all things. The wise understand that truth is rarely a single color. They see the interdependence, the way so-called opposites define each other. This is a core tenet of Buddhist philosophy, the principle of pratyaya samutpada, or dependent origination. Nothing exists in absolute isolation, all phenomena arise in dependence upon causes and conditions. The wise person, therefore, is slow to condemn and quick to seek understanding. They hold space for complexity, knowing that what appears as a dark thread in the pattern may be essential to the integrity of the whole cloth. On a path leading to a beautiful vista, there was a stone bench. A sign was placed there by a well-meaning soul that read, "Rest and enjoy the view." Soon, people began to argue over the bench. "You've been sitting too long. I need it more. My group deserves it." The bench, meant for peace, became a source of conflict. An old gardener who tended the path quietly removed the sign. He did not replace it. He simply began to care for the area around the bench, planting fragrant lavender and keeping it clean. Now, when travelers came upon it, they would pause. Without the command to rest and enjoy, they had to decide for themselves. Some would sit briefly and move on, making space. Others would stand nearby, appreciating the lavender. The bench was used more, and fought over less, because its purpose was not dictated, but discovered by each heart. The wise know that imposing too rigid a structure on things, or people, often creates friction. This echoes the Buddhist concept of sunyata, often translated as emptiness or openness. It is not that things don't exist, but that they are empty of a fixed, independent, permanent identity. The bench was not inherently a resting bench. It was stone and space. By releasing the fixed label, the gardener allowed its function to arise naturally from the needs of the moment. The wise apply this to their expectations of others and the world, finding greater peace in flexibility than in rigid demand. A king sent a messenger to a neighboring kingdom with a vital, secret proposal of peace. The journey was long and perilous. Bandits attacked the messenger. He lost his horse, his pack, and the sealed scroll. He arrived at the neighboring court, battered and empty-handed. The foreign king demanded the message. In that moment, the messenger, who had rehearsed the scroll's contents 1,000 times on his journey, did not recite the formal, diplomatic language. Instead, from his heart, he spoke of his own king's weariness of war, of the fields lying fallow, of the mothers in both kingdoms who wept the same tears. He spoke not from parchment, but from the raw, human truth the parchment was meant to convey. The foreign king, expecting cold diplomacy, was disarmed by this human plea. The peace forged that day was stronger, for it was built not on perfect words, but on recognized shared suffering. The wise understand that the essence is more vital than the perfect form. While preparation is key, attachment to the specific form, the exact words, the precise plan, can blind one to the needs of the living moment. In Buddhism, this touches on the concept of upaya, or skillful means. The dharma, the teaching, is not a rigid scripture, but a medicine to be skillfully applied. The messenger, in forgetting the literal message, delivered its true spirit with profound skill. Wisdom lies in holding our plans and knowledge lightly, ready to adapt the form to serve the essential truth. In a remote monastery, there was a bell that was only to be rung when a monk attained a profound, irreversible insight into the nature of reality. Decades could pass in silence. Novices would sometimes ask, "Is the bell broken? What if an insight is missed?" The abbot would say, "The bell is not for the noticing of others. It is for the moment the inner universe aligns. It will ring itself through the hand of the one who sees. You will know. One winter night, during a deep meditation, an elderly monk who had spoken little for years simply stood, walked to the bell, and struck it once. A single, pure, resonant tone filled the silent valley, seeming to hang in the frozen air longer than sound should. Every soul in the monastery felt it in their bones, not as a sound, but as a vibration of truth. No announcement was made. No explanation was given. The next morning, everything was the same, yet everything was different. The wise recognize that the deepest transformations are often silent, internal, and need no external validation. This reflects the profound, ineffable experience of Kensho or Satori in Zen, a glimpse into one's true nature. It cannot be fully described, only experienced. The pursuit of constant external recognition for our growth is often the ego's demand, not the spirit's journey. True wisdom is often a quiet, seismic shift within, whose effects are felt in one's being, not proclaimed from the rooftops. These stories, of the weaver, the bench, the messenger, and the bell, paint a picture of wisdom that is flexible, essential, humble, and profound. They show us that intelligence is not about adding more complexity to our thinking, but often about subtracting our assumptions, our rigid labels, and our need for control. We have walked through the grove of stories. The path now leads toward understanding how these qualities weave together into a single, harmonious life. Let us continue our walk together, venturing now into a grove of ancient trees, where the light filters down in dappled patterns and the air holds stories. Sit back, listen, and let these tales breathe life into the principles we have been contemplating. In a town plagued by constant, bitter arguments, there lived a weaver named Silas. Unlike others, he did not weave bright tapestries of gold and crimson. He worked with a loom that held both black thread and white. Townspeople, caught in their disputes of right and wrong, good and bad, would come to him, each demanding he weave a tapestry proving their side was pure light and their opponent was utter darkness. Silas would listen to each, nodding. Then he would invite both parties to his workshop. He would not speak of their conflict. Instead, he would begin to weave. He would take the black thread and create a shape that looked, to one person, like the dark shadow of a betrayal. But then, with a few passes of the white thread, that same shape became the protective silhouette of a mountain at night. He wove scenes where light defined the form of the shadow, and shadow gave depth and dimension to the light. A solid patch of white became a blinding snowfield, lost and featureless, until a line of black thread gave it the horizon of a distant forest. After watching him weave in silence, the opponents would often leave, their argument drained of its absolute certainty. Silas never judged, never declared a winner. He simply demonstrated, through thread, the interdependent nature of all things. The wise understand that truth is rarely a single color. They see the interdependence, the way so-called opposites define each other. This is a core tenet of Buddhist philosophy, the principle of praditya samutpada, or dependent origination. Nothing exists in absolute isolation, all phenomena arise in dependence upon causes and conditions. The wise person, therefore, is slow to condemn and quick to seek understanding. They hold space for complexity, knowing that what appears as a dark thread in the pattern may be essential to the integrity of the whole cloth. On a path leading to a beautiful vista, there was a stone bench. A sign was placed there by a well-meaning soul that read, "Rest and enjoy the view." Soon, people began to argue over the bench. "You've been sitting too long. I need it more. My group deserves it." The bench, meant for peace, became a source of conflict. An old gardener who tended the path quietly removed the sign. He did not replace it. He simply began to care for the area around the bench, planting fragrant lavender and keeping it clean. Now, when travelers came upon it, they would pause. Without the command to rest and enjoy, they had to decide for themselves. Some would sit briefly and move on, making space. Others would stand nearby, appreciating the lavender. The bench was used more, and fought over less, because its purpose was not dictated, but discovered by each heart. The wise know that imposing too rigid a structure on things, or people, often creates friction. This echoes the Buddhist concept of sunyata, often translated as emptiness or openness. It is not that things don't exist, but that they are empty of a fixed, independent, permanent identity. The bench was not inherently a resting bench. It was stone and space. By releasing the fixed label, the gardener allowed its function to arise naturally from the needs of the moment. The wise apply this to their expectations of others and the world, finding greater peace in flexibility than in rigid demand. A king sent a messenger to a neighboring kingdom with a vital, secret proposal of peace. The journey was long and perilous. Bandits attacked the messenger. He lost his horse, his pack, and the sealed scroll. He arrived at the neighboring court, battered and empty-handed. The foreign king demanded the message. In that moment, the messenger, who had rehearsed the scroll's contents 1,000 times on his journey, did not recite the formal, diplomatic language. Instead, from his heart, he spoke of his own king's weariness of war, of the fields lying fallow, of the mothers in both kingdoms who wept the same tears. He spoke not from parchment, but from the raw, human truth the parchment was meant to convey. The foreign king, expecting cold diplomacy, was disarmed by this human plea. The peace forged that day was stronger, for it was built not on perfect words, but on recognized shared suffering. The wise understand that the essence is more vital than the perfect form. While preparation is key, attachment to the specific form, the exact words, the precise plan, can blind one to the needs of the living moment. In Buddhism, this touches on the concept of upaya, or skillful means. The dharma, the teaching, is not a rigid scripture, but a medicine to be skillfully applied. The messenger, in forgetting the literal message, delivered its true spirit with profound skill. Wisdom lies in holding our plans and knowledge lightly, ready to adapt the form to serve the essential truth. In a remote monastery, there was a bell that was only to be rung when a monk attained a profound, irreversible insight into the nature of reality. Decades could pass in silence. Novices would sometimes ask, "Is the bell broken? What if an insight is missed?" The abbot would say, "The bell is not for the noticing of others. It is for the moment the inner universe aligns. It will ring itself through the hand of the one who sees. You will know." One winter night, during a deep meditation, an elderly monk who had spoken little for years simply stood, walked to the bell, and struck it once. A single, pure, resonant tone filled the silent valley, seeming to hang in the frozen air longer than sound should. Every soul in the monastery felt it in their bones, not as a sound, but as a vibration of truth. No announcement was made. No explanation was given. The next morning, Everything was the same, yet everything was different. The wise recognize that the deepest transformations are often silent, internal, and need no external validation. This reflects the profound, ineffable experience of Kensho or Satori in Zen, a glimpse into one's true nature. It cannot be fully described, only experienced. The pursuit of constant external recognition for our growth is often the ego's demand, not the spirit's journey. True wisdom is often a quiet, seismic shift within, whose effects are felt in one's being, not proclaimed from the rooftops. These stories, of the weaver, the bench, the messenger, and the bell, paint a picture of wisdom that is flexible, essential, humble, and profound. They show us that intelligence is not about adding more complexity to our thinking, but often about subtracting our assumptions, our rigid labels, and our need for control. We have walked through the grove of stories. The path now leads toward understanding how these qualities weave together into a single, harmonious life. Let us continue, and now turn our attention from the vision of the woven tapestry to the hands that learn to weave. The principles are clear, the portrait of wisdom vivid. But how does one, in the midst of an ordinary life filled with deadlines, conversations, and the endless hum of activity, begin to cultivate this? The journey begins not with a grand upheaval, but with a single, conscious breath. It begins with the decision to plant your feet on the path of awareness, one mindful step at a time. Think of your day as a garden. You cannot will the flowers to bloom all at once. But you can, today, pull one weed of distraction. You can water one seed of patience. You can observe, without judgment, the quality of the soil, your own mind. Cultivating the silent potter within, start with your next project, your next intention, be it writing an email, organizing a closet, or learning a new skill. Before you begin, make a silent vow to yourself. I will not speak of this work until it is complete. Feel the energy that usually flows out in words gather in your hands, your mind. Notice the urge to share, to seek validation or feedback prematurely, and simply let it pass like a cloud. This is not about secrecy, it is about conserving creative force. As you work, embody Alara the stonecutter. Let the work itself be the only announcement. See how the quality of your focus deepens when it is not partitioned off for presentation. Drinking from the aquifer of experience, today, choose one interaction deliberately. With the next person you speak to, a colleague, a cashier, a family member, listen not just to their words, but for the experience behind them. Ask yourself silently, what can I learn from this person's unique perspective? The grumpy coworker might teach you about endurance under pressure. The cheerful child might remind you of unfiltered joy. Approach them not as roles, but as wells of lived experience. Your goal is not to extract information, but to connect with the aquifer beneath their surface. This practice dissolves barriers and turns every encounter into a lesson in humanity. Lighting your lantern of discernment, the next time you hear a compelling piece of news, a juicy rumor, or even a strongly held opinion, pause. Before you react, before you repeat it, before you let it shape your mood, perform the ritual of Lien the sailor. Ask yourself quietly, what is the primary source? What evidence is before me? What might I be missing? You do not need to launch a full investigation. Simply holding that question, lighting that internal lantern, creates a space between stimulus and reaction. In that space, wisdom grows. You gradually stop being a terrain over which rumors and emotions blindly storm, and become the steady observer holding the light. Tending your garden of time, this very day, take 5 minutes, truly, just 5. And do nothing but sit with the awareness of impermanence. Look at your hand. See it as it was as a child, as it is now, as it will be. Feel the seconds passing, each one unique and gone forever. From this visceral feeling, not from guilt or pressure, ask, what is the one most essential seed I can plant with this hour today? Then, protect that hour as the old scribe protected his morning. Let lesser things wait. Procrastination loses its power when confronted with the palpable truth of anicca, of impermanence. You are not managing a schedule, you are stewarding a sacred, non-renewable resource. Practicing the sky-like nature, your practice ground for non-complaint is your own internal monologue. For the next hour, simply notice each complaint that arises. It's too cold, this traffic is terrible, he is so annoying. Do not try to stop them. Just label them silently, complaining. Observe them as weather patterns passing through the sky of your mind. The sky does not cling to the cloud, it simply provides the space for it to pass. By observing the complaint without fueling it with your identity, you begin to disown it. You start to become the vast sky, not the temporary storm. This is the foundational practice of equanimity. These are not grand tasks, but subtle shifts in attention. They are the slow, patient work of tuning an instrument, your own being, so it can resonate with clarity. A student came to a master, overwhelmed. There are so many precepts to follow, so many meditations to practice, so many texts to read. I become lost. Where do I even begin? The master lit a single candle in the dark room. Your task for tonight is simple, the master said. Keep this candle lit until dawn. Protect it from drafts. Ensure it does not gutter. Do not let it set anything aflame. Provide it just enough attention, not too much, not too little. The student sat all night, focused on the single flame. He shielded it from breezes with his hand. He trimmed the wick when it grew long. He watched its light dance on the walls. In that long, quiet vigil, he was not thinking of the vast dharma. He was present with one point of light. At dawn, as the candle burned its last, the master returned. What did you learn? The student said, I learned about attention that is gentle and steady. I learned about the fragility and resilience of light. I learned about providing the right conditions, and then letting the flame be itself. I learned about the long patience of the night. The master nodded. You have practiced right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. You have acted with care and responsibility. You have not spoken, yet you have communicated with the flame all night. Begin with one candle. Then, you will understand how to tend the great light within. This story illustrates the method. Start with one small, concrete practice. Do not attempt to overhaul your entire character. Choose one quality, perhaps mindful listening, or guarding your speech about unfinished work, and tend to it like that single candle for a day, then a week. Mastery of the whole arises from intimacy with a single part. The path of cultivation is one of gentle, persistent return. You will forget. You will be swept away by old habits. The wise person does not use failure as a club to beat themselves, but as Lien used the broken lantern, as evidence of what needs repair. Ah, they note, I spent the whole afternoon complaining in my mind. The sky became cloudy. Now, I return to the practice of observing the clouds without becoming them. This is the work. It is the most important work you will ever do, for it shapes the instrument that experiences everything else in your life. We have moved from vision to practice, from the tapestry to the first woven thread. The journey now deepens into the heart of what sustains this practice over a lifetime. Let us continue, and now delve into the quiet, enduring source that fuels this lifelong cultivation. For the practice of wisdom is not sustained by willpower alone, which flickers and fades like a match. It is sustained by something deeper, more reliable. A connection to the fundamental nature of reality itself, as pointed to by the Buddhist teachings. It is fueled by understanding, and by a heart that has been softened and strengthened in equal measure. This fuel is twofold, like two wings of a bird, deep understanding and unconditional compassion. One is the map, the other is the heart to walk the journey. Deep understanding is the internalization of the core truths the Buddha awakened to. It is not an intellectual belief, but a bone-deep knowing. When you truly understand anicca, impermanence, you stop clutching at moments, at possessions, at youth, at life itself. You hold them like a bird in your open palm, appreciating their presence, knowing they will fly. This understanding fuels the wise use of time, it drains the power from procrastination, for you know, later, is not a promise. When you truly understand anatta, the concept of not-self, that what you call, I, is a flowing, interdependent process, not a fixed entity, the need to defend a fragile ego lessens. This fuels the release of complaint and the ability to take responsibility, for there is less of a solid me to protect or blame. When you understand dukkha, that suffering arises from clinging to what is impermanent and not self, you see the mechanics of your own pain with clarity. This fuels discernment and inner dialogue, as you learn to trace suffering back to its source in your own attachments and aversions. This understanding is not gloomy, it is liberating. It is the ultimate form of protection. It is why the wise person can guard their thoughts, they know which thoughts lead to entanglement and which lead to freedom. A sculptor famous for his works in marble sought the ultimate masterpiece. He traveled to a frozen northern lake and decided to carve a magnificent goddess from the clear, blue ice. He worked day and night, possessed by a vision. The sculpture became breathtaking, capturing light in its frozen depths. He was prouder than he had ever been. He slept, dreaming of the acclaim he would receive at dawn. He awoke to a warm, unseasonable wind. Frantic, he watched as his goddess began to weep. Drops formed and fell from her serene face. Her sharp lines softened, blurred, and began to slump. He screamed at the sun, cursed the wind, wept over the melting form. An Inuit elder, watching from the shore, approached. "You carved ice," the elder said simply. "Did you expect it to behave like stone? Its beauty is its transience. Watch now." As the form melted, it became something else, a pool of water reflecting the vast sky, then vapor rising to join the clouds. The sculptor, in his despair, had only seen the loss of the form. The elder saw the continuous, transforming life of the water itself. The sculptor's understanding shifted. He had been clinging to a form, raging against its nature. True artistry, he saw, was in appreciating the essence through the form, not in demanding the form defy its own truth. Deep understanding is knowing the nature of the material you are working with, and that material is life itself, which is inherently impermanent, interconnected, and in flux. This knowledge is the fuel for non-attachment, for resilience, and for a profound, unsentimental appreciation of the beauty in each passing phase. The second wing, unconditional compassion, begins with oneself. A mind that whips itself for every failure, every lapse in mindfulness, every moment of forgetfulness, is a mind at war. This internal war drains all energy for wise action. The Buddha taught metta, loving kindness, and it always begins with the self. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. This is not selfish, it is foundational. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot offer genuine compassion to others if you are a source of cruelty to yourself. This self-compassion then naturally expands. When you understand that others are also subject to anicca, anatta, and dukkha, judgment softens. That difficult person is clinging, just as you sometimes cling. They are suffering from a mistaken belief in a fixed self, just as you sometimes do. They are acting from ignorance, not from inherent evil. This does not mean you become a doormat. It means your response can arise from clarity and a desire to alleviate suffering, rather than from reactive anger or hurt pride. Compassion fuels the redwood-like nature of non-complaint. It fuels the patience to learn from everyone. It is the warmth that balances the clear, cool light of understanding. A young monk was given the daily task of fetching water from a stream for the temple garden, using 2 large jars hung on a pole across his shoulders. One jar was perfect and always delivered a full portion. The other jar had a crack, and by the time the monk reached the garden, it was only half full. For 2 years, this went on. The perfect jar was proud of its accomplishment. The cracked jar was ashamed of its imperfection, miserable that it could only do half of what it was made to do. One day, by the stream, the cracked jar spoke to the monk. I am so ashamed. I leak all the way back, and I waste your effort. The monk smiled. Did you notice the flowers on your side of the path? He asked. The jar said it had noticed some wildflowers. I have always known of your crack, said the monk. So, on your side of the path, I planted seeds. Every day, as we walk back, you water them. For 2 years, I have picked those beautiful flowers to decorate the temple altar. Without you being just as you are, there would be no beauty on that side of the path. Unconditional compassion is seeing the worth and purpose in what appears to be broken. It is understanding that so-called flaws are often the very channels through which life waters unexpected gardens. This compassion for the cracked jar within ourselves and others is the energy that allows us to continue the practice without burning out in shame or frustration. It turns perceived failure into part of the landscape of growth. Sustained by this dual fuel, the clear light of deep understanding and the warm heart of unconditional compassion, the practice of wisdom becomes self-reinforcing. Each mindful moment deepens understanding. Each act of compassion, starting with yourself, makes the heart more resilient and open. This is the engine of awakening. We have found the wellspring. The final part of our journey will be about bringing this all home, about living this wisdom not as a separate practice, but as the very air you breathe in your daily, ordinary, extraordinary life. Let us complete our long walk together. We have mapped the landscape of wisdom, felt the texture of its threads, and learned the quiet, patient motions of the loom. We have discovered the fuel that lights the way, deep understanding and unconditional compassion. Now, let us bring this back to the ground beneath your feet, to the very ordinary magic of your next breath, your next step, your next kind word. For the ultimate purpose of all this teaching is not to create a philosopher on a mountaintop, but to nurture a fully alive human being in the marketplace, in the home, in the quiet of your own room. Wisdom is not a separate activity. It is the quality you bring to brushing your teeth. It is the attention you give to the taste of your morning tea. It is the patience you find when stuck in traffic. It is the honest word you speak when a lie would be easier. It is the silent completion of a task before you speak of it. It is the gentle release of a complaint about the weather. It is the inner pause before reacting to a provocation. It is the responsibility you take for a mistake, and the compassion you offer yourself afterward. This is the great integration. The Buddhist path culminates not in a state of otherworldly detachment, but in a state of fully engaged, compassionate presence, what is known as engaged mindfulness. The Buddha, after his enlightenment, did not stay in perpetual bliss under the Bodhi tree. He walked back into the world for 45 years, teaching, interacting, getting his feet dusty on the roads, dealing with difficult people, and guiding others. His wisdom was his engagement. In a bustling city, there was a monk who chose to live not in a secluded monastery, but in a small room above the noisy market. Disciples would ask, "How can you meditate with all that chaos? The shouting, the smells, the arguments?" The monk would reply, "The shouting is my reminder of the human desire to be heard. The smells are my lesson in impermanence, the scent of fresh bread arises and passes, the smell of garbage arises and passes. The arguments are my study in the cause of suffering." Clinging to views. For him, the market was not a distraction from the dharma, it was the dharma, alive and swirling around him. His practice was to meet it all with the clarity of the lantern holder, the steadiness of the deep river, the compassion of the cracked jar. He was not separate from the world, he was a calm center within it, affecting it simply by the quality of his presence. A vendor, calmed by just seeing the monk's serene face on a hectic day, might be kinder to a customer. That customer might carry that kindness home. The monk's wisdom rippled out not through sermons, but through his way of being. True wisdom is lived in the world. It is your interface with reality. It is how you meet each moment, whether it brings joy, sorrow, boredom, or challenge. So, how do you begin, truly? You have already begun. By listening, by reflecting, you have planted seeds. Now, nurture one seed. Just one. Perhaps you choose. Today, I will complete one small, meaningful task without telling anyone about it. Be the silent potter. Feel the satisfaction that needs no external applause. Or, today, I will catch my first complaint and simply note it as weather in the mind sky. Practice being the redwood, not the storm. Or, tonight, before sleep, I will spend 5 minutes in the inner library. Ask yourself one question with gentle curiosity: what did I learn today? Listen to the answer that arises from your deep river, not from your busy, surface mind. This is the practice. Day by day, thread by thread. There is no finish line called enlightenment to anxiously race toward. There is only this step, this breath, this opportunity to be wise. The great Korean Zen master Sung Sain would often say, only go straight. Don't complicate it. In any situation, just ask, what is the most wise, compassionate, and present response I can offer right now? Then do that. That is, going straight. As we draw our long conversation to a close, let me leave you with a final, original tale. A traveler lost in a deep, misty forest finally stumbled upon a guide's hut. Desperate, he begged, show me the way out of this forest. The guide, an old woman with kind eyes, said, I cannot show you a way that does not pass through your own feet. But I can give you 3 lights for your path. She handed him 3 small, smooth stones. The first stone is for seeing. When you are unsure, hold it and ask, what is truly here, beyond my fear? The second stone is for pausing. When you want to run or fight, hold it and take 3 breaths. Let the storm in your chest settle. The third stone is for remembering. When you feel alone or forget why you walk, hold it and remember that every step taken in awareness is a step out of the forest, even if you cannot yet see the edge. The traveler, somewhat disappointed not to get a map, took the stones and entered the mist. Days turned to weeks. He used the first stone when he heard strange noises, realizing it was just a deer. He used the second stone when anger at his situation arose, and the pause allowed a clear thought to emerge. He used the third stone in moments of despair, and it gave him the heart to continue. He never got a map of the forest. But one day, he realized the trees were thinning, the light was changing. He emerged, not at the place he had entered, but at a beautiful, unknown meadow he never would have found otherwise. He looked at the 3 stones in his palm. They were just stones. But they had taught him how to walk. You, dear listener, have been given many such stones tonight. The stone of silent completion. The stone of learning from all. The stone of discerning truth. The stone of time's preciousness. The stone of the forgiving sky. The stone of learning from failure. The stone of responsibility. The stone of inner dialogue. The stone of protecting your inner world. The stone of thoughtful speech. The stone of deep river focus. They are not a map out of your life, for your life is not a forest to escape. They are lights for walking your unique, authentic path with more clarity, more peace, and more compassion. This has been a long and I hope fruitful journey from the monk's temple. If this path of contemplative wisdom has been a refuge for you, if you wish to carry these stones and walk further, then let this temple be your guidepost. By subscribing to the monk's temple, you make it easier to find your way back to this space of calm and insight. You join a community of fellow travelers. Your subscription is a vote for more content like this, and it fuels our shared journey. Please, consider hitting that subscribe button and ringing the notification bell, a gentle digital kinhin, a walking meditation bell, to remind you to return to presence. Share your thoughts in the comments. Which stone resonates most with you? Your stories and reflections are part of our shared path. Thank you. Thank you for your precious time, your open heart, and your willingness to look within. May you walk your path with courage and kindness. May you be the silent potter, the deep river, the forgiving sky. May you find wisdom not as a distant goal, but in the palm of your hand, in the very next thing you do. Go in peace.